Here's a priest to glaze Pete Holmes for misunderstanding atheism.
This comedian has the perfect joke roasting atheism, and Cardinal Pell has an amazing mic drop moment talking with atheist Richard Dawkins.
Really? You still want to boost Cardinal Pell? He's still your guy, is he?
Hey, I'm Father David Michael Moses. I'm a Catholic priest, and if you're new here, please consider subscribing so you don't miss future videos. Let's jump right into this comedian's routine.
Some people think God created the universe. Some people think nothing created the universe, which is the funniest guess. And the nothing people make fun of the God people. They say God doesn't exist. I'm like, okay, maybe. But you know what definitely doesn't exist? Nothing. That's the defining characteristic of nothing.
This is a great example of an equivocation fallacy. That's when a particular word is used to mean different things in the same argument, resulting in an absurd conclusion. When I say nothing created the universe, I mean that the universe wasn't created. What Pete Holmes thinks that means is that there is a thing called nothing, and this thing created the universe, which of course is absurd.
Is that it doesn't exist. So what are we talking about?
Gosh, that's so good. And it's so true. I mean, the idea that the universe spontaneously erupted into existence is insane.
Yeah, that's why I don't believe it. To say that the universe spontaneously erupted into existence implies that first existence did not contain the universe, then suddenly existence did contain the universe. This is not what I believe. I don't believe that the universe was ever absent from existence. There was never a time when the universe did not exist. This should be obvious given that the universe is the space-time continuum, so by definition, the universe exists whenever time exists. Even if time has not existed infinitely, there was no event at which there was any change from a state of affairs in which the universe does not exist to one in which the universe does exist.
It's comical. It's humorous. It just shows the absurd lengths that people are willing to go to avoid saying God created everything, to avoid putting God in the picture. For atheists, there just cannot be a supernatural creator.
Of course not. First of all, what even is the supernatural? I'm not going to hypothesize the supernatural as an explanation for anything, given that I've never even heard a coherent definition of what the supernatural even is. Also, I don't believe that the universe even had a creator. You can't create something at a time when it already exists, and there was never a time when the universe didn't already exist.
There can't be anything like a God figure, so they have to say something crazy like nothing. Really, what they have is faith. They're willing to say the nothing is going to explain everything. The nothing has to be the explanation for it.
No, I don't even believe any explanation for the creation of all of space and time, because I don't think the notion that all of space and time could be created is even coherent.
They rag on Christians for having faith, but really they have faith too. We just have faith in God. They have faith in nothing.
This is another equivocation. I don't have faith in nothing in the sense that nothing is a thing in which I have faith. I have faith in nothing in the sense that I don't have faith at all.
Either you think it's God, something you can't see, touch, taste, photograph, and science can't prove, or you think it's nothing, something you can't see, touch, taste, photograph, and science can't prove.
I don't think it was either.
But I think we can all agree, if your nothing sometimes spontaneously erupts into everything, that's a pretty magical nothing, you guys.
No, there never was nothing, nor was there any spontaneous eruption. The Big Bang was just the earliest moment of the universe's expansion. It was not an event at which anything was created or erupted into existence.
Exactly. Because you can't say God, you need to say it's some very, very special nothing. The problem is if you say it's something, then the next question is, well, what created that something?
Unless it's God, right? God is apparently the only something that doesn't need a creator. If God can be uncreated, why can't the universe?
So you have to keep going back to when there was nothing for the start of the universe. And the problem is nothing just doesn't work very well unless it's something.
It works if, when you say nothing created the universe, you mean the universe wasn't created. I believe the universe wasn't created just as you believe that God wasn't created.
This actually reminded me of another quick clip of a debate between atheist Richard Dawkins and Cardinal Pell, who is a Catholic bishop, Catholic cardinal. Check out this moment. This is amazing.
Of course it's counterintuitive that you can get something from nothing. Of course common sense doesn't allow you to get something from nothing. That's why it's interesting. It's got to be interesting in order to give rise to the universe at all.
I don't think Dawkins is understanding the physics here. To say that anything gave rise to the universe implies that there was a state of affairs in which there was no universe, followed by a state of affairs in which there is one. There was never any state of affairs in which the universe didn't already exist.
something pretty mysterious had to give rise to the origin of the universe. You can dispute exactly what's meant by nothing, but whatever it is, it's very, very simple. And why is that funny?
Well, I think it's a bit funny to be trying to define nothing.
Why? Nothing can be used in multiple different ways, and sometimes people get confused as to which way it is being used in any particular context.
You see him floundering, right? Trying to define nothing and trying to explain how the nothing he's talking about is actually kind of a unique, interesting, mysterious nothing.
This is why Dawkins isn't a physicist or a philosopher. Maybe he had just read Lawrence Krauss's book in which he tries to define nothing as some kind of primordial state of the universe, which is not what nothing typically means.
And then when everybody laughs, because the audience, who I'm assuming like half of them probably were actually on his side, they're laughing because they know it makes no sense. But he has faith. He can't get out of it because he can't say God.
He can, but he doesn't because that's not where the evidence points. If God is, as theologians and apologists say, a timeless, spaceless entity, then it's not clear what evidence of such a thing would even look like. How could there be evidence of something so nonsensical?
And Cardinal Pell over here is just saying, hey, it's pretty funny that you're trying to define nothing. Like that's something a child should be able to do.
Apparently it's not something you or Pete Holmes can do, given that you're confusing the use of the word.
If we're talking about science, the answers should be more logical, not less logical. They should make more sense, not less sense.
The idea that the universe was created makes less sense, given there was never a time when the universe didn't already exist.
Here's the thing. Theism, the belief that there is a God, starts actually very, very simply. We're just saying there's a world, it must have been created. That's the starting point.
And it's a complete non sequitur. Why does the mere existence of the world mean that it must have been created? Clearly, you don't believe that existence alone is evidence of a creator because you don't believe that God's existence implies that God had a creator.
I don't start my arguments for God by trying to convince somebody of the divinity of Christ or of the resurrection or something like that. I believe those things. I believe that those things are true, but that's not the starting point of theism. The starting point, the foundation, is actually much, much simpler than that. St. Thomas Aquinas had something he called the 5 proofs for the existence of God. You can check those out.
No, he called them the Quinque Viae, which means the 5 ways.
But the main thrust of it is very, very simple. We see all these things in the world. Something must have created them.
Why does the same logic not apply to God?
We see all this movement in the world. Things are moving and we know things can't move themselves, so there must be some first mover.
Since Newton, we have understood that yes, things can move themselves. Aquinas gets from Aristotle the idea that moving things require constant propulsion. Newton later discovered that things in motion will stay in motion all by themselves. It's only things at rest that require something else to move them. The universe as a whole has never been at rest, therefore motion per se requires no ultimate source.
A lot of things in the world aren't necessary. So there must have been some being that originally was necessary, so all of these contingent things could come into existence. And at the end of each argument, Aquinas says, and this is what we call God.
Why can't the universe itself be that necessary entity? Why would the universe be contingent given that it has never not existed?
His point in that is not that he doesn't know more things about God. He was actually a Catholic priest. We know that he had lots of things he believed about God. But his point is that the beginning of this conversation of if there's a God or not, it starts on a very basic common sense level.
I don't find it to be very sensible, commonly or otherwise, to infer that existence needs a creator, therefore there must exist a thing whose existence doesn't need a creator. That's special pleading at best and an outright contradiction at worst.
Like, we'll get to the more complicated stuff, but we can invite an agnostic into a conversation with a very basic premise. It doesn't have to be about the resurrection or the divinity of Christ. And those things are important. We'll get to those things. But it starts with, hey, the world exists. So someone must have created it.
My response to that is the same as your response to the assertion that since God exists, someone must have created him. You clearly don't believe that the existence of a thing per se proves that this thing needs a creator because you don't believe that principle applies to God. Just as you believe that God can exist without needing a creator, I believe that the universe exists without needing a creator. If I asked you what created God, you would say nothing. That's the funniest guess. To everyone who helps me out on Patreon, you're a big help. Thanks so much.